I want to welcome everybody in. I see the Zoom room is filling up here. As you join the Zoom, like always, we invite you to open the chat box and tell us who you are and where you're Zooming in from and your Penn State class year. We will be getting started in just a couple of minutes. Please note our PowerPoint, which is now on your screen. Hopefully you are seeing that. We now have a new feature available to us in that this session is being live closed captioned. And so they are available not only on the link that you just saw on your screen by typing that link into a browser, and you'll be able to customize your closed caption experience, but also on the bottom of the screen, you can find the closed caption button. You can go ahead and press that and make closed captioning available right here in your Zoom live stream. Again, welcome everybody. You can also see, I think Mel has just put that link into the chat box. So if you need to use the closed captioning, you can click on that link right there. Again, go ahead and tell us who you are and where you're from and your Penn State class year. We will be getting started in just a couple minutes with Renee Messina from Penn State Sports Medicine. Good afternoon, Charlene from Bellefonte, class of 91. I think I know her. All right, we will be getting started in just a minute or two. Welcome to the Penn State Alumni Association's virtual speaker series. And welcome to our audience that is viewing us on Facebook. We are on Facebook Live. We are here in Zoom. Go ahead and drop your name and where you're from and your class year in the chat box or in the comments on Facebook. We will be getting started in just another minute. Peter Sheridan has joined us from Berks, class of 98. Peter is a regular here on the virtual speaker series. Good to see your name. I see Kurt Marshall, class of 86 from University Park. Kurt joining us. Good to see you, Kurt. Where else would you rather be than a Zoom full of Penn Staters? Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us. I'm Paul Clifford, CEO of the Penn State Alumni Association, and I'd like to welcome everybody to today's virtual speaker session, which is being recorded. Live closed captions are available for this event. You can access them by clicking the closed caption button at the bottom of the Zoom video window, and then by clicking Show Subtitle. You may also customize your caption view by clicking the stream text link posted in the chat. This afternoon, we welcome Renee Messina, the Assistant Athletic Director for Athletic Training Services for Penn State Intercollegiate Athletics. Today, our discussion is the latest installment in a recurring series of virtual programming brought to you by the Penn State Alumni Association. You can view a full list of all of our virtual programs at alumni.psu.edu. Now I'm happy to welcome Renee Messina. Renee has been the Assistant Athletic Director of Athletic Training Services since March of 2018. She is charged with overseeing the athletic training staff and athletic training services for approximately 900 student athletes across 31 varsity sports and rugby and cheer and dance here at Penn State. She's also responsible for developing athletic training strategies, implementing policies and protocols that ensure compliance with NCAA and Big Ten conference rules and regulations to ensure that the health and safety of all Penn State student athletes. Renee will share a summary of sports medicine services that our Penn State Athletic Trainers deliver to our student athletes every day and discuss the continuation of these services as they have faced the current pandemic. This will include a discussion of the transition of rehabilitative services in the early days, as well as the creative offering of telemedicine for our student athletes. It's now my pleasure to welcome Renee Messina to the virtual speaker series. Renee, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thanks, Paul, and welcome everyone. Let me get my screen here. Assume we're good there to see that. So yeah, just welcome everybody. I'm pleased to be here today to share with you all a little bit about what sports medicine services and athletic training services for our Penn State student athletes looks like, and then also the return to sport protocol that we have implemented during our COVID-19 pandemic. So let's see if we can get a not advancing here. Sorry, I'm gonna try again with that. We are not advancing my slides. Give me 1 second. Sorry, bear with me here. We did just chat us.
Renee, you might want to try using your arrow button if you are trying to advance the slides.
Yeah, I'm gonna pull this up again. Slideshow. Yeah, it's not going live for me here. Oh, there we go. I'm gonna see if I can change this view. Is that better?
Perfect.
Okay, sorry about that.
That's okay.
Yeah, so you can tell I'm not a tech person. I'm a people person. So my apologies for that. Yeah, so I just want to talk. Obviously, I think one thing that I want to start off with is a little bit of just kind of explaining what athletic training is and what our athletic training services are to our student athletes. There's oftentimes a confusion by people that that they confuse an athletic trainer with our performance enhancement staff, which are strength and conditioning staff members. So our athletic trainers actually are licensed healthcare providers. They're licensed in all states in the U.S. Except for California, I believe. And ultimately, are trained to provide medical services to a wide array of individuals, not just athletes, and in a wide variety of job settings. My staff is responsible for the annual medical clearance of all of our student athletes, along with our team physicians, and doing their pre-participation examinations. We offer primary care services to our student athletes every day, managing injuries and illness prevention, dealing with general medical conditions along with injuries, promoting wellness and education programs, offering emergent care, activating an emergency action plan when necessary, whether it be due to injury, heat illness, our lightning plan, all of those sorts of things. And also, certainly the examination, clinical diagnosis of athletic injuries as they occur, along with therapeutic intervention and rehabilitation. So really the athletic training staff here at Penn State is responsible for comprehensive medical care for all of our student athletes in conjunction with our team physicians. We work closely with our team physicians. Dr. Wayne Sebastianelli is our Director of Athletic Medicine. He's been here for 27 years at Penn State. We have 5 primary care sports medicine physicians that we work closely with, and 4 orthopedic surgeons, with Wayne being one of the orthopedic surgeons here at Penn State. I seem to be missing a slide, but I want to highlight my staff, which is unfortunately the slide that I'm missing. I have 26 athletic trainers on my staff, 3 managers. My head athletic trainer at football, Andy Mutnan, is one of my managers. Andra Thomas, Andy's been with us 2 years and has about 17 years of experience. Andra Thomas has been with us for 28 years. She works primarily with our women's soccer program. And John Salazar has been with us, I think, 23 years, and he works with our men's basketball program. And then we have other staff members that work, collectively with all of our sports programs here at Penn State. So, throughout the COVID pandemic, I think early on, we had our teams that were training. We discovered in the first week of March that, that our sports were going to be shut down. And, we had athletes that remained on campus. We had athletes that were home or out of town for spring break. And we very quickly had to discover how we were going to provide services to them. And, we implemented, telehealth visits as I'm sure many of you have participated with your own healthcare over the last several months, but telehealth visits with our student athletes. We maintain daily contact with them, coordinating rehabilitative services, however and wherever needed. We did, make decisions to refer athletes that were, out of the State College area to PT services if they had essential rehab needs. We had athletes that remained in the State College area that we received approval to continue to provide in-person care for. We were one of the only departments, one of the only groups within Intercollegiate Athletics that continued to have in-person work, in-house work in our facilities with our student athletes really throughout the duration of the pandemic. And that was to make sure that we continued to meet the medical needs and provide the services to our student athletes that were here in town and on our campus and continuing to have a need. Very early on, we realized that, that with the impact of the pandemic and what that was having on our student athletes with regard to their mental wellness, I have 2 staff members that are certified as mental health first aid instructors. And over the last 2 years, they have taught a mental health first aid course. So all of our staff members, all of the strength and conditioning staff, our academic support staff members, a number of coaches as well, because we understand that certainly that mental health issues and illnesses are certainly a problem and within our country and not we certainly see them within our student athletes as well. So one of the things very early on is that we needed to decide as a staff how can we respond to our student athletes, how can we identify not only to take care of their injury concerns but also any mental health concerns. How do we help them cope and how do we cope ourselves? I mean, as people that are individuals that are, accustomed to really just sort of, developing relationships and being there with the student athletes every day. I mean, our athletic training room are normally, have athletes sort of come and go. We normally have tons of foot traffic and it's a place for the athletes to come, not to hang out, but it's a safe space for them no matter what's going on, whether they're dealing with an injury or whether they're dealing with an external stress or a stress related to, whether it's academics or their sport or coach or whatever. So, trying to figure out how we can help them cope, but also how we could cope because obviously the change in what our work environment was, and we had a lot of concern certainly about our student athletes. So, trying to figure out how we can help them through this time to deal with, certainly a lot of the anxiety and depression that many of our spring sport athletes were facing with the loss of their seasons. And then also the fear that was quickly developing in the rest of our teams as we move forward into the summer with the, concern about whether or not, we were going to be able to bring them back to campus. So, we began to figure out, it was critical for us to figure out how we could move forward with, with creating an opportunity for our student athletes to return to campus and to return to an opportunity or return to training, but also, doing so in a safe way. So, one of the things that the athletic department and Sandy Barber have, promoted through this time is, we can, we will, we are. And we really, very early on decided that we felt it was necessary. We thought it was critically important to find a way to get our student athletes to have the ability, if they chose, to return to campus and return to training in a safe environment amidst the COVID pandemic. So I think it was, critically important that we developed a return to sport, protocol. We call it, we've been calling it essentially success with safety. It involved extensive education of our administration, of our coaching staff, of our student athletes. It involved extensive risk mitigation strategies and a lot of other considerations to make sure that we could, really take everything into consideration about how we could continue to develop an environment that was safe for our student athletes, how we could continue to offer our medical services to our student athletes, and continue to offer an opportunity for them to train. So, our number one goal throughout this program has really just been education. We've been educating, really, since we developed this program. It's been our priority and our focus to reduce the risk of the disease transmission. We've had weekly head coaches meetings where I've been a part of, our medical director's been a part of, and the administration has been a part of these meetings. Twice a day, at least twice a week since March. Management team meetings at least twice a week since March. We developed this return to sport protocol, and we've offered 46 different educational presentations to coaches, athletes, and parents throughout the process. So we thought it was critically important when we developed this return to sport protocol that we offered it to our sport coaches, where we were able to sort of talk through and express to them what our protocols would be, take into consideration any questions that they may have. And then we offered them separately a separate presentation to each of our sport programs for the student athletes, and an opportunity for parents to join as well, so that they can understand and feel comfortable with our decisions to allow student athletes to return. It was always optional. It always has been optional for student athletes to return to campus and return to training. We wanted to make sure that that we had an opportunity to answer questions that parents might have, and develop a safe environment so that the parents and student athletes felt comfortable with their sons or daughters returning to campus, and that we felt comfortable with the environment that we were going to allow them to train in. We've had ongoing educational sessions. We have signage throughout all our facilities with regard to risk mitigation strategies. And I think it's important that this is a situation that has been fluid. I will say that our protocols that we implemented back in early June, when we had our first teams return to campus. I think football returned the second week of June, and men's and women's basketball around that same time. We had a few other fall sports return a couple weeks later. We've had a lot of, this has been a fluid situation, and our access to testing has been, fluid and changed throughout this process. So it's important that we continue to have ongoing education with our student athletes and our parents. We had a parent session actually Sunday afternoon, and had an opportunity to have a couple hundred student athlete parents call in, an opportunity for them to ask questions about any of our processes and anything related to our student athletes. So I think, it's important that we talk about that there's certainly are individual risk mitigation strategies. Wearing a mask. We've asked student athletes and staff to wear masks, certainly in all of our facilities. Our student athletes are expected, as all other students are on campus, to wear a mask, in the classroom and around the community. We certainly have the State College Borough Ordinance to abide by for mask wearing. that's been implemented in our community. We're asking everybody, our student athletes and staff, to maintain social distancing greater than 6 feet to respect personal space and hygiene of individuals. We're certainly promoting, hand hygiene and personal hygiene. I think one of the most important things is hand washing through this whole process. Certainly instructing people on, cough and sneeze etiquette, being mindful of others in your space. Keeping your personal electronics cleaned regularly. I think this is something, that's important, particularly with our younger population, our student athletes in particular, and even our staff, who always have that electronics, always have their phone handy, making sure that they're cleaning those regularly, cleaning their computers regularly, and reporting any signs and symptoms of illness to the athletic trainer immediately. We want to know very early on if we have individuals that are presenting with any symptoms of illness, of any illness, so that we can kind of sort through with what we think might be going on. We're also, educating them on the importance of a diet that's high in immune boosters, and making sure that, that they have the nutritional support that they need as well throughout their training, and making sure that, that we're cleaning our facility as well, and that we're following the COVID-19 guidelines, really all of the time, so that we can continue to have a safe environment here. We've examined early on what our training groups should look like. How many people might be in a group to train. Trying to have consistency of training groups when possible. So, essentially having roommates in the same group. Very early on when we started our training programs, we had, roommates were lifting partners, and they were the early on training partners before we began combining groups. I think it's important that we, try to, continue to maintain some control over that. We've discouraged carpooling outside of roommates and household members. And then, early on during the training process, we also think it's important to be mindful of sport positions. We use the example, if we use football as the example, we certainly wouldn't necessarily want to train all of our quarterbacks in the same session. By chance that one of them, they were to hang out and live together and all of that, and one of them would have become infected, they could potentially infect the rest of the group. So, we've been very mindful about how we develop our training groups, and being very deliberate. We've talked about face covering. Our student athletes have been provided the gaiters, and I know there's been some controversy. I shouldn't say controversy. I guess there's been some question that followed an article that was released a few weeks back about the effectiveness of gaiters, and the gaiters that we have are not fleece gaiters. I think the article that was presented had to do with essentially using a spray bottle to spray through a fleece gaiter. And there was some discussion about the efficacy of those gaiters. Ours are not fleece material, and actually, we've provided all of our student athletes with masks as well. So they have masks that they're wearing, to classes and across campus. And the gaiters, the purpose of the gaiters really is to, when they're training and when they're on the field and when they stop and have, coach talks and that sort of thing, they have the ability to pull up a face covering very easily. So it does help prevent viral transmission, and reduces the particulates from contaminating surfaces. So in their lifting environments, those sort of things, if we have the ability to kind of reduce that risk, we felt it was important. Certainly talking, a lot of effort has gone into, keeping our environment clean, disinfecting the equipment, personal hygiene. We've talked about regular cleaning of the equipment, with regard to our weight rooms and our athletic training rooms. So we're scheduling our appointments, our sessions, by appointment only. Very intentional about, how many people we have within the facility, and making sure that equipment is cleaned afterwards. We also have some new technology, an air PHX system that helps to eliminate bacteria and viruses in the air and on the surfaces. We have a number of other equipment items that are being used by some of our sport teams to also sort of minimize risk. So our football players are wearing full shields. Our ice hockey will be wearing a lower shield as well, and we're looking at some options for lacrosse as well. So when we talked about our return to sport for our student athletes, it was very much, and still continues to be, a staged screening process. So prior to arrival, essentially, the student athletes received that educational presentation, as I've talked about, and much of that material is what I'm showing you here today. So they received the educational presentation in advance of their arrival. They were provided 14 days prior to their arrival. They were provided a comprehensive COVID-19 screening questionnaire for completion, and that gave us an opportunity to, for the medical staff to essentially determine if they've had any exposure to COVID-19, what their travel plans were for arriving to State College. If they had any concerns about arriving or coming back to campus, we certainly wanted it to be optional for them. And we did have some student athletes that did elect to not return. So I think it's, it was important that we provided all of our information to them and then ultimately gave them the decision to choose if they wanted to return to campus or not. So about a week before their arrival to campus, we implemented a 1-week self-quarantine at home in their place of residence. So that essentially meant that, we wanted to make sure that, that they were doing really all the things that we've been expected to do since March to try to mitigate this our risk of contracting COVID-19 and to try to ultimately rid our country of this virus. So, being responsible with regard to social behavior, essentially, primarily spending time with, with family members, with household members, doing essential tasks. So going to get groceries, going, to do those essential needs. They were allowed to train and work out. We didn't want them training in public gyms, although back at that time, in the early days, most of the public gyms were closed. We essentially wanted them to implement a 1-week self-quarantine prior to arrival. And throughout that process, they reported, each day they reported any symptoms or illness that they might be experiencing. So again, that we could help to identify if there were any COVID-related symptoms that would be of concern, that we would ask them to not return. And then once they arrived on campus, we did a COVID-19 test on every person that arrived on campus of our student athletes. We required an additional 1-week self-quarantine at their place of residence at campus. So the reason being that they're, when they're when they're quarantining at home with their family members, those family members are considered their close contacts. Once they arrived to campus and they were then sort of moving into apartments and places with other teammates, they were essentially developing a new household group. So we wanted them to self-quarantine within that household group as well. Also during that time, we were doing our medical clearance procedures for all of our new and returning student athletes. So a pre-participation exam for every student athlete. We felt it was critically necessary that we met one-on-one with every student athlete as they returned, because they had spent months out of our care from the time that they had gone home back in March. And then of course, getting to know our new student athletes and making sure that they went through all of the necessary medical clearance procedures in order for them to be able to participate in sport here. If we did have any student athletes that identified that they had tested positive for COVID-19 prior to their return, we have done some additional cardiac screening for those individuals, and we continue to do so. And then once they finished that 1-week quarantine, that's when we we allowed them to initially begin training. So part of their training requires arrival to our facilities. It's very it's scheduled, so they can't just, as I said before, our athletic training rooms used to be areas where athletes would just sort of drop by and drop in, and we always had a lot of foot traffic throughout all of our athletic facilities, and that's not the case anymore. Unfortunately, we do need to we need to keep that at a minimum. We need to keep visits to our facilities for essential needs only. So we have all of our student athletes and staff completing a wellness questionnaire every day, getting their temperature checked prior to entering the facilities, and doing training and rehab by appointment and scheduled appointments only. So I talked a little bit about that pre-arrival comprehensive screening, and I think it's important that, some of the questions that were on there had to do with, have they felt sick, including all the symptoms. We've seen this symptom list increase. Certainly when we started talking about COVID-19 back in March, we were only talking, really about flu-like symptoms. We were talking about a fever, a cough, and tightness in the chest or shortness of breath. Since then, we've seen a number of other symptoms associated with COVID-19, including nausea, diarrhea, runny nose, congestion, sore throat, and loss of taste and smell, with particularly loss of loss of smell being one of the very early symptoms that can be detected in, or that can occur in someone with COVID-19. So again, we've talked to them about whether or not they've been in close proximity with anyone who's felt sick in the last 14 days, or if they've been in close proximity with anyone that is currently feeling sick, and if they've been tested for COVID-19. So our daily, wellness check every morning, we're asking the athletes to sort of, and our staff, this really is really everybody involved in intercollegiate athletics. It's really from the top, the top administration from Sandy Barber down. We're asking everybody each day before you would ever go to work, wake up in the morning, just sort of think about, do a self-check as to whether or not you're experiencing any symptoms. And if they are, we're asking them, the student athletes, to call the athletic trainer to let them know and not to come to the facility. So in years past, that would just be a drop-in visit. They would stop in and say, hey, I woke up and I have a sore throat, or I feel like I have a fever. And unfortunately, during this time, we can't allow that anymore. So we're asking them to call. We do a telehealth visit with them, and we make a decision as to whether or not they can just sort of isolate in place and monitor their symptoms, or if they need to be referred for COVID testing, or if they need to have a follow-up telehealth visit with the team physician. So we're coordinating that prior to their arrival to the facility. And then if they don't have any symptoms and they arrive to the facility, then they are required to be masked at the entrance. And throughout the facility. They are using their phone to screen a QR code to access a screener survey. They fill out a series of questions related to whether or not they're experiencing any symptoms. They record their temperature, and they're permitted to proceed into the facility as long as they don't have any symptoms or a fever. So some other regulations within our facilities, again, all with the intentions of trying to mitigate risk, is that we have a single entry within our designated entry within our facilities. We have a screener staff that is at that entryway, screening individuals as they enter into the facility. And again, trying to identify if there would be anyone that would be symptomatic or might have a fever, and they would be turned away. If they do get turned away, it triggers a notification to the athletic trainer for their sport so that they know to follow up with them. And therefore, in most cases, they're just calling or texting them right away. But, important that we have that follow-up care if we were to detect something upon their screener, their little screener questionnaire. So we've got everybody screened. Initially, we've not allowed locker room access, particularly during the early phases within the summer. We asked our student athletes to arrive in their practice clothes. They trained, and then, they were going home and showering. And we've begun to phase locker room access with some of our teams, particularly now that we are, have athletes that have been on campus for quite a while now and have been training, and that we're doing more regular testing. We continue to minimize, some of those social spaces and lounges continue to be closed. And we also continue to abide by the governor's orders of no more than 25 people within a space. I think that's been a challenge for us, certainly when we think about some of our indoor sports and our indoor spaces. Even within our facilities for rehab purposes, we have to be mindful all the time about how many staff we have in that facility and how many athletes we might be able to treat. Or when we're talking through practice activities, if it's an indoor facility, again, we have to be mindful of, how many coaches, how many student athletes, how many other support staff might be present, so that we can abide by those regulations. We've had some other training considerations with regard to, making sure. I talked about the locker room access. One of the big things very early on for us as athletic trainers was, how are we going to hydrate our student athletes to keep them safe, particularly during the summer months? We normally have racks of water bottles, and they'll come over and grab a rack and, squeeze the water into their mouth. And, we were thoughtful about the fact that we didn't want them grabbing the same water bottle. We didn't want them spraying water into their mouth that could splash into somebody else, or, or them breathing on the bottle or that sort of thing. So everybody has their own individual labeled water bottle. That's the only thing that they can drink out of during our practice sessions, and we refill them in a no-touch manner. Certainly no spitting, no seeds for our baseball players. Things that we had to be mindful of that could potentially spread the virus, and again, just making sure that we're regulating who comes and goes from our facilities, and doing things that are necessary. When we have someone that has a possible or confirmed exposure to COVID, so for someone that tests positive for COVID-19, they're being placed into isolation. This is true of any student here at Penn State, and really of anyone that should contract the virus. This is the CDC guidelines. So when someone with COVID-19, they'd be placed into isolation. Isolation continues for a minimum of 10 days or until determined by our team physicians. Once those 10 days is completed, we are doing additional cardiac screening before they're permitted to return to activity, and there is an acclimatization back into activity. We also are offering the isolation housing that the campus has over here at Eastview Terrace. If we have someone that's symptomatic or suspected, they're known as a person under investigation for COVID-19, they're also placed into isolation until we can get testing results back. Last week, the University Health Services began offering a rapid test where there's a turnaround time. We're getting results back within a couple hours. And if they are positive, that person is placed into isolation. If they're negative, we're asking them to continue quarantining and minimizing their exposure to anybody else. And that test is being sent out to a Quest lab for some further analysis, a little bit more sensitive testing. And we're maintaining them in quarantine until we get those results back. The other task that we have with when we have somebody that is either symptomatic or positive for COVID-19 is the contact tracing piece. So identifying individuals that potentially are considered a high-risk contact that's been in close proximity. So within 6 feet for 10 minutes or greater is considered a high-risk contact. So we're identifying those people and they're being asked to quarantine for 14 days and log their symptoms. Anyone that does not fall into that category would be considered a low-risk contact. And we are asking them to continue to kind of monitor for symptoms, but they are permitted to continue training. So I think, you know, within our department here, our sports medicine services, as I said, just sort of to summarize, to offer a summary, you know, we're maintaining social distancing within our facilities. Our appointments are scheduled and we're not allowing drop-in appointments. The equipment and facilities are cleaned after every appointment and every use. Athletes have their personal water bottles, and we still are offering in-person essential rehab to our student athletes, and we continue to offer telehealth visits and support services for rehab needs that don't require in-person or in-house care. Our sports medicine, our strength and conditioning staff, which is our performance enhancement staff, again, they're regulating the number of student athletes that are training in a training activity at any time. They're regulating the movement and conditioning activities in designated practice areas so that they can maintain social distancing during those activities. We're following what's known as our Penn State acclimatization policy. So essentially it's how we train our student athletes over a period of time with increasing the progression of activities so that it can be done so in a safe manner. And then also, you know, early on, we essentially had weight training activities that were occurring outside and then eventually transitioning to inside. We have a performance nutrition staff, and our nutrition is distributed by the nutrition staff. We used to have a little bit more flexibility in what we allowed with regard to eating and drinking within the facilities. So making sure that snacks are pre-packaged and that there's not sort of self-serve options to make sure that the products are clean. So, you know, packaged items similar to what you'd find like at a grocery store, and then being careful that they're not eating within the facilities and that they have good hand hygiene and all that when they're eating. And then finally, our performance science staff. So we have a number of individuals that really do some assessment of our student athletes with regard to, you know, baseline testing and then you know, heart rate data and some of our wearable technology, making sure that those devices are cleaned and sterilized, and so that we can also track sort of the intensity and volume of their work. We are continuing with testing. So we did as I mentioned, we did our initial baseline testing of all of our student athletes when they returned to campus. And then we are continuing with weekly testing of what we're calling the team pod. And this is all of our student athletes, our coaches, our medical staff, strength and conditioning staff, our performance science, which is our strength and conditioning, our performance science staff, and then our managers and athletic training students. So individuals that sort of have those close contact with our student athletes are being tested weekly. And then, as we hope to one day move into, one day soon, move into competition, we'll follow the Big Ten testing guidelines going into competition. So again, I just want to thank, this is some of my staff members who have been with me for years and do a great job every day of taking care of our student athletes and making sure that we've continued to provide an elite level of healthcare and medical services to our student athletes over the past 8 months, however long it's been since we've been dealing with this, and we'll continue to do so. I think that the health and safety of our student athletes is what's critically important. And I always just want to thank my family who are support me through this process as well, and wouldn't be here certainly without them. But certainly want to give the opportunity for questions if anyone has any questions. But again, I want to thank you all for joining in and listening to what we've developed as a protocol. This was developed by what's known as our sports performance leadership team, which is our leaders of our various departments that manage and work with our student athletes, and an opportunity for us to share this with you and if there are any questions.
Excellent. Thank you, Renee. If you have any questions for Renee, you can drop them into the Q&A section on the bottom of Zoom, or put them in the comments on Facebook Live. We'll try to get to as many questions as we possibly can. But Renee, in the intro, I mentioned that you came to Penn State in 2018. Where were you prior to Penn State? Maybe walk us through other places you've been.
Yeah, so I actually did my undergrad at Penn State, received my Bachelor of Science degree here at Penn State, and then I went to East Stroudsburg University, got my master's at East Stroudsburg, and was recruited back to Penn State by our head athletic trainer at the time. So I actually was only gone for a couple years before I was back here and hired on staff. I spent about 14 years on staff as a staff athletic trainer, clinical athletic trainer, for 14 years with men's lacrosse, and about 10 of those years with women's field hockey, some time with softball, some time with women's soccer, and a couple other programs. And then I spent 7 years as the clinical coordinator of the undergraduate athletic training program. I took a little reprieve from the long hours, late nights, weekends, travel that an athletic trainer always does. And when my kids were young, my daughter was starting kindergarten and my son was a newborn. So it took about 7 years to spend a little time, raising them through their younger years before I came back to athletics, and have been back here ever since. So I've been at Penn State. I've got 28 years under my belt. So.
Okay, so I'm doing some quick math here, and I may be wrong about this. I went to Bloomsburg of Pennsylvania State Athletic Conference School that East Stroudsburg also is. Were you at East Stroudsburg when Coach Franklin was playing football there?
I was. I actually was a graduate student athletic trainer with the team. Yeah.
Okay, now we don't want you to release any kind of medical information, but was Coach Franklin ever one of your, any one of the athletes that you treated, and how was he as an athlete to work with?
I don't recall that I ever treated, or that he may have had an injury during my time there, but I just remember him being, certainly intense and hardworking, and I think we see that certainly reflected in what he does today. Absolutely.
So I was on the football team at Bloomsburg when James was at East Stroudsburg, and I always remind him that they never beat us while we were both there. He likes to remind me that I never got on the field, and he did. So he has that on me. Talk a little bit about that relationship that your office has to have with coaches, and how you maintain that relationship, and what the planning for injury and treatment might be for athletes, given the relationships with the coaches and kind of the specificity of each sport.
Yeah, it varies by sport certainly, but I would say the best relationships are ones where, and it's been was my experience for many years here at Penn State. I worked with a lot of great coaches over the years, but where there's a mutual respect, a mutual understanding, and mutual respect for each other's space and each other's profession. Certainly. The medical staff has a responsibility to make medical decisions about the student athletes and to share that information with the coaches. The coaches obviously are going to conduct their practices and run their schedules and their games and such as they see fit. But certainly having open communication is critically important. We have a number of our teams that do a really great job of having what we call weekly performance meetings. So they're meetings essentially where the head coach, the coaching staff is there, the entire coaching staff is there, the athletic trainer is present, strength and conditioning staff member is present, nutrition staff, academic support, team physician when possible, strength and conditioning and sports science. So really bringing everybody that's kind of has a relationship with that team and those student athletes that supports that program, bringing them together into a room and talking about those student athletes, and the best cases are when you kind of go down the line and you talk about each student athlete individually, because we might have a student athlete that is struggling academically, or maybe they're struggling from a performance standpoint on the field, and the coaches are getting frustrated. It's important for us to make sure that they understand what might be going on, both from a physical standpoint, but also from a mental health standpoint. We have a close relationship with our performance psychologists. We have 2 performance psychologists on staff here at Penn State, and our athletic trainers work very closely with them, as well as our nutrition staff. And, in dealing with those, whether it be sensitive cases, whether it be, eating disorders, whether it be, issues of anxiety or whatever it might be. So I think sometimes, we have to be mindful of what's sensitive and can be shared, but also it's important to get in a room and have a conversation about, what's going on with this person. And sometimes, I've been in meetings where, we've had to tell the coach, like, you just need to back off, because this kid's really, they're struggling academically, they're struggling, with from a health standpoint or wellness standpoint. And that doesn't happen very often, but when you have that collective, that collaboration and that communication of a staff that works with our student athletes, that's the best situation. And that happens, really across the board with most of our programs here, where there's, to some extent, there's some form of that, where you've got all the stakeholders that work with that program in a room, once a week or every other week, just sort of talking through, so that all the needs can be addressed, whether it's from an injury standpoint, whether it's, they've got an academic issue or whatever it might be. Because normally one impacts the other.
Right. So one of the things that I've noticed in the work that we do at the Penn State Alumni Association is that since COVID-19 hit, we have heard from our colleagues around the Big Ten. Our community of practice has actually come closer to each other, right, to provide support and share best practices. Are the Big Ten schools collaborating on best practices for testing and safety? I know Rutgers has been out there in terms of one of the test centers and the saliva test that they've developed. Talk about your collaboration with your colleagues across the Big Ten.
Yeah, I think that's one that, that's something that's been really, great through this whole process. So every May, the first week of May, we generally have a Big Ten sports medicine meeting that's held at the Big Ten office in Chicago. And it's attended by usually myself, usually my head athletic trainer with football, and then another athletic trainer from our staff, and a couple of our team physicians. And so it's bringing together of a group of individuals from each institution, and we talk about health and safety protocols, and we talk about hot topics and whatever it might be over the course of a couple of days. Well, certainly when COVID hit, we couldn't do that. So it was nice that we actually conducted that meeting, but we did it virtually, and it gave us an opportunity to invite the staff of every Big Ten school into that meeting, which had not been done before, because obviously it's not, you can't send everybody to Chicago. So It was a great opportunity. It allowed us to really kind of talk together as a group. It allowed us to develop breakout groups. So we were able to break out like our Olympic sports into one group for other special talks, our football, staff into another group for talks, and really kind of talk about, the needs of our individual sports. That's continued throughout the summer. So really since May, we've had a weekly, I've participated in weekly sports medicine meetings of the head athletic trainers and team physicians from across the conference. We meet every day. I'm actually missing it today. We meet every Tuesday at noon and talk about, really just sort of, what our concerns are, what, how it's impacting each institution, what testing is like for each of us. We had some issues earlier in the summer where we were utilizing a lab when we had a delay in getting our results back. So it was really kind of keeping us stagnant. We weren't able to, return our kids to training because we were waiting on some test results. Since then, we're utilizing the vault test that the university is using, and that's the test that you referred to, the saliva test out of Rutgers, or that was developed at Rutgers. So we're utilizing that test now, which is a much easier and more rapid collection. Collect samples from a couple different people at once. We're getting a rapid turnaround. We also have better testing at UHS, which is helpful for us. So it gives us an opportunity. Those Big Ten meetings really gives us an opportunity to share, what's happening across each institution, to talk about individual sports, to talk about, as we were doing a slow phased progression, we were seeing that at some other institutions, and we were seeing other ones that really just kind of, when June 1st hit, they brought everybody back. We also had institutions because COVID didn't hit everybody at the same time in the same way. So we had some institutions that really, weren't impacted early on. And
yeah, Iowa and Nebraska.
Closing out of here. Yeah. Sorry, I had something pop up on my screen. I lost you there. Yeah, that really never stopped training, so I think for us, it's been a great opportunity, and the collaboration that we've had as a sports medicine group from the Big Ten has been wonderful. I mean, I think that, we've developed, relationships over the months now of understanding how this is impacting, everybody individually, but in many ways, all of us the same.
So, question coming in from one of our listeners: what are the odds of sports this semester?
So that's not really my decision, but
I realize that.
Yeah, I think it's important to understand, for everybody to understand, that there are ongoing conversations, as I'm being told. Certainly these are conversations that are taking place at a higher level, but I think the goal is that we have seasons for all of our sports. That's the expectation. We've heard that, that our fall sports have been postponed, is what we know. We don't know an official start date for all of them. I know there's been talk out there about, what could be possibilities for football. There are discussions that are being taken place for our other fall sports, and certainly our winter sports, which are up next. I think that's important that, the decision's been made on fall sports. There's not been a decision made on winter sports yet. So we do expect a decision to be made with dates about when a season might occur. That's our hope, right? That's where we're at. At least that's my hope. We have allowed an opportunity for these students to come back. And I apologize because I probably said for these kids. I tend to say that because I sometimes treat them like they're my kids, both good and bad. They hear it from me, both sides. But to allow these students to come back and train and to take classes, and we hope that we can offer the opportunity for them to compete. That's our goal.
Absolutely. So I'm trying to think about, as we go into winter sports and making that winter sport decision, were there some things that we learned with the fall sports decision that might be applied in making a winter sport decision different? And so some of the things that I'm thinking about is certainly not all sports are created equally, right? There's certainly more contact in wrestling and hockey and football than there might be in golf and cross country and tennis. And so has it been kind of a blanket mitigation strategy across all sports, or and then the decision to cancel sports? Or do you think that they might take a look at each sport individually and say, okay, a cross country season might be safe, or a tennis season might be safe, but maybe not necessarily with all the contact for football or for hockey or wrestling?
Yeah, and that's tough. I mean, I think that's a tough decision to make. And for me, while there might be some sense to be made by that, I think that's a tough decision, because I would never want to, and I wouldn't say that you're valuing one over another, because it does come down to health and safety. I think you make that point, and and that's an important point to make. But I do think that we can offer an opportunity for all of our sports, if with consideration for testing and consideration for training environment. I do think there's the possibility to offer an opportunity for a safe opportunity for everybody, to play. I'm not aware, nor do I think that Sandy Barbour would be supportive of a decision to cancel and prioritize, some sports over others. I think that I would hope that we're a long way away from that. But, I do think that, as it stands, all fall sports were canceled. So that does include cross country. There is consideration for what a season might look like for them in the spring and or at a different time, and I'm not sure yet when that time is, but.
Absolutely. So when I think about your operation and the resources that you have available to you, and you cancel a fall season, right? Or you postpone a fall season and now move that potentially to either winter or into the spring. How does that have an impact on your ability to use the resources you have available to you to make sure that each sport has the facilities, has the availability to the facilities and the treatment that they need? Does all those sports happening in a shorter time frame really put stress on your all's ability to do your jobs?
Maybe in some ways, but really not really, to be honest with you. I mean, our sports here, athletics, Division I athletics, there's not really an in season and an out of, an out of season. Right. We have athletes that come here and train year round. We have a lot of athletes that are preparing for the Olympics. We had a lot of athletes that were, potential Olympic contenders last year that now, are hopeful, Olympic contenders for 2021. So we do have a lot of athletes that really train, that train year round. So for us, with regard to the medical services, we're prepared to offer services year round. We have teams here training all summer. There's really not an off season for my staff. The facility issue is really what I foresee to be one of the issues, and not necessarily within our athletic training facilities, but training facilities, right? So if we're moving into the winter seasons and into the winter sports, we have our Haluba indoor field, and that field is used throughout the year by, both lacrosse programs, certainly by football, soccer programs, baseball goes in there, softball goes in there. A lot of our teams will train in there during the winter and during the colder months. So facilities are the one thing that I think could be something that requires, us to be a little creative in how we, can manage that. But there's a whole other crew that is looking at that. It's good.
Absolutely.
I don't have to. I just have to tell, they tell me where to show up and when, and that's when we're there. So,
yeah. Let's shift away from COVID-19 for 1 second. One of the fascinating things that I find about the work that you do, and about some of the advances in the work that you do, is around the monitoring and the wearable technology, how you're able to monitor student athletes, whether it's nutrition or sleep, even beyond their time on the field. When I came here to Penn State, we came from the University of Oregon, where the sophistication of their wearable technology got to the point where a coach would get a notification to say, okay, this player needs to come out of the game because they're a little dehydrated, and they need to come out of the game and rehydrate or you know, so talk a little bit about that, because I think that's a fascinating aspect to the work that you all do.
Yeah, and that really falls under the scope of Josh Nelson. He's our assistant AD for sports science, and that's kind of his focus area, along with Dwight Galt, who's our performance enhancement, oversees our performance enhancement staff. But yeah, I mean, it's amazing the technology that's come a long way. I mean, with heart rate data, and I've worked with a field sport where, yeah, I mean, we looked at, we monitored heart rates of individuals in the game, and when someone reached a certain level, it was like, okay, they need to come out, and then they rested for, they could rest for 2 minutes, and their heart rate would be back to a rate where we felt that they, could go back in and be productive again. And it's, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of, there's a lot out there, and we certainly have some devices and some of that wearable technology that a couple of our programs use, or some of our programs use. But and it's to help a lot of it's used in a health and safety manner as well, to try to make sure that we're monitoring heart rates and volume load, so that we're not, we can track how many, what their distance is in a practice, and what their, high intensity actions are, that type of thing, so that we can regulate that. I mean, I've been in a practice that, where the, performance staff mentioned to the coach that the team's numbers were at a certain level, and we walked off the field. The work was done for that day, because to continue to train them at a higher level could have potentially put them at risk. So it's been a nice, number of nice devices out there that can help to reduce risk and keep our athletes safe.
Well, Renee, I want to thank you for taking time and sharing about the good work that you're doing on behalf of our student athletes for Penn State Athletics. Thank you for joining us today on the virtual speaker series.
Thanks, everybody.
As a reminder, we'll be hosting additional speaker sessions. We'll have another virtual speaker series actually later this week, focused on helping your high school age and elementary school age students thrive in the remote learning environment. If you are a fan of Penn State Athletics, you're going to want to join us tomorrow for coffee hour, 9 o'clock on the East Coast, as I sit down and I talk to Kajana Carter from the class of 1995. Kajana will be joining us tomorrow on coffee hour. And then Thursday night, 8 o'clock is the premiere of Football Letter Live. We hope that you'll tune in to hear about Penn State football history and our traditions, and to hear from John Black, the editor of the Penn State Football Letter. Again, all being brought to you by the Penn State Alumni Association. To find out more information about these events, visit our website at alumni.psu.edu. Thank you again for participating, and we are